Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Happier Active. I'm Ellie, the host, and this week I spoke with Terme Hayempour, who runs the Everyday Shift. She's a hypnotherapist and she does rapid transformation therapy. It's a really great conversation about hypnotherapy and how and why that works, and lots of scenarios in which it can work and be helpful, and also just about the science of that and also making changes. We talk a bit about, neuroplasticity and how your brain works and what's going on in your subconscious that can be helped by using these kind of therapies and techniques. So it's a really great and interesting conversation, and I can't wait for you to hear it. And as ever, if you have any thoughts, feelings, feedback, or topics you would like covered, I would love to hear from you. Happieractive@gmail.com. And otherwise, enjoy the show. Um, there are many ways to find your path to better health and happiness, and what works is highly individualized. My philosophy is that most people are more likely to find that if they're active participants in their own journey. And this is a space to start exploring some of the rich and varied areas in which people practice, so you can start thinking about new or different practices and see what resonates with you to either start or deepen your own health journey. And today I have Terme Hayempour, who is a hypnotherapist who runs a company called The Everyday Shift. So welcome, and why don't you tell us a bit about what you do?
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here, Ellie. So, I'm a certified hypnotherapist and an RTT practitioner, which stands for Rapid Transformational Therapy. A lot of people
Mm-hmm.
have heard of hypnotherapy, but I think that for most people, when they hear hypnotherapy or hypnosis, they think of stage hypnosis, where someone gets you to do something that's out of your control and you're quacking like a duck and you have no control and no memory of what happened. That
Mm-hmm.
is not true hypnosis. Think of hypnosis like if you've ever been driving in your car going to work and it's the same route that you take every day, and the next thing you know you're at work and you were there, you were aware, but it just kind of happened. That's a state of hypnosis. We get into it when we daydream. There's many points throughout our life and throughout our day where we're naturally in a state of hypnosis. But when we talk about hypnotherapy, it's this idea that we are relaxing the critical part of our mind so that we can tap into the subconscious, which has all of the answers. Your subconscious is like a 24/7 recording device that is going from the time that you're in the womb. So when you do hypnosis to get to the root of someone's beliefs or struggles or issues, you're able to bypass the part of your mind that says, well, that's not really it, because it's easy for a lot of us to say, oh, it didn't matter what happened when I was a kid, or that's not the reason why I'm insecure. That's not the reason why I'm scared to publicly speak. But then when you go into a hypnotherapy session with them and you regress them to the root of that, a lot of things that I would say the majority of what we're facing today and how we approach it, right? Because it's less about what happens to us in life and it's more about how we
Mm-hmm.
perceive what has happened to us. So you'll
Mm-hmm.
find it's like someone heard their mom say something about them when they were younger, or they were embarrassed in front of the class, or something happened that their brain latched onto. That thought created a belief. This belief has dictated their actions either consciously or unconsciously. And now their reality is shaped by these things that sometimes they don't even remember where they started. So that's really what the practice of hypnotherapy is about, getting to the root cause of things. And my form of hypnotherapy that I do, rapid transformational therapy, was created by Marissa Peer. She's a world renowned celebrity hypnotherapist. She's been in this space for 40 years. She was Princess Diana's therapist. She's
Mm-hmm.
worked with kings and queens and professional athletes and celebrities and heads of state. And she found over doing traditional therapy over the years that there were certain techniques that could work to make it a lot more effective and a lot faster, because you shouldn't have to go to therapy every week for the next 10 years to solve one thing that you're dealing with. If you can get to the root of it and rewire the thinking and the belief around it, which I hope we'll talk about a little bit of how that all works, then you can have a lot better, faster lasting results. So that's what I do. I love it. I'm a big believer. So thanks for letting me share that.
You're welcome. Yes, because I think you're right about the kind of idea that people have about hypnotherapy in their head is often, yeah, like the kind of more like magic trick end of it. Um, and where actually it's almost like finding a kind of flow state or something to kind of tap into a part of your brain that you don't always have easy access to.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly.
So I imagine sometimes people are a bit like nervous about the idea of doing it. So how do you help people feel like, at ease when they're getting started?
I think the thing that I like to always remind my clients is that you're in full control. You can't
Hmm.
do so I can't make you do something or put a thought into your subconscious that you are resistant towards, which is also why it doesn't work for someone who comes in and says, "Well, this is all bullshit. This is," excuse me, I don't know if I could say that.
Yes.
So you have to be open to it, right? You have to be
Hmm.
open to it, because if you have this resistance and you don't think it's going to work, it's not going to work, because I can't force you to think anything or to believe anything.
Hmm.
So I think reminding people that they are in control, and control is also a little bit of an illusion, right? Because what do we really have control over? Nothing. We have control over what we think. And sometimes we don't control the first thought, but we can control the second thought. So all of this is just a practice in getting better at picking thoughts and visualizations in our mind and the pictures that we create that are in line with the life that we want, because it all starts in your head. Like I always tell people, it's literally all, everything around you, it's all in your head. If you change
Hmm.
what's in your head, you can change your entire reality. Even if nothing on the outside, if your relationships don't change, if your work doesn't change, just by changing the thoughts that are in your head, which then change your beliefs and then your actions, you can
Hmm.
change your whole life.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And it's really interesting that thing about control. It's often like because of a place of fear, which is probably because of something that's in there that's making you frightened to do something. And so it's like a form of resistance to growth.
Absolutely. And look, we have to remember that our mind is hardwired to always go to what is familiar. Because even
Hmm.
if what is familiar is not good for us, it's familiar. So it's like, that saying, better the devil I know. It's
Hmm.
our mind really works like that. And so our work is to take what is familiar, if it's something that we don't want, and make it unfamiliar, and take the thing that we do want and make that familiar. And that's, are you familiar with the term neuroplasticity?
A little bit, but I would love
So
a
I'll
explainer.
Yeah, I'll explain it to you. So neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to create new neural pathways. It's
Hmm.
essentially why habits stick, and why when you repeat something over and over again, it becomes easier, because
Hmm.
again, our brain is going to what's familiar, and that's because it's based in neuroscience. There are neural pathways in our brain, and the more that we do something or repeat something or think something, the stronger that becomes and the more default that becomes. So if you are trying to change something, like even if nobody, let's say you wanted to change something in your life, but you're like, I'm not ready to do hypnotherapy. That's
Hmm.
okay. Start by writing an affirmation every day, or putting something on your mirror. I'm enough. I'm lovable. I'm worthy. I am happy. Whatever it is, whatever the thing is that you're struggling with, just by simply repeating that and seeing it over and over again, you will start to change those neural pathways in your brain. So, yeah, it's amazing how I think for so long everyone thought that when we would talk about this stuff, it was woo woo and it's spiritual. And I think for me, there is a very spiritual aspect to it.
Hmm.
But since I've become a hypnotherapist and studying this in school, I've become fascinated by the fact that this is actual science. It's like it's rooted in neuroscience. There's studies. There was actually a Harvard study that was done by this neuroscientist. He was studying neuroplasticity in the brain, and he took pianists, and he had one group of pianists that just they had 5 bars that they would practice every single day on the piano, and then they had another group that didn't touch a piano. They just practiced those bars. They visualized it in their head. And after 1 week, they studied the part of their brain that controls their motor function, and saw that there was a change in both the people that physically practiced and the people that mentally practice, because your brain doesn't always know the difference between what's reality and what's going on in your head. So
Mm.
it's really important to be mindful of what we're thinking.
Yeah, and that's so powerful because if you've got like these really strong negative self beliefs, you're like making them real by thinking them all the time. Like you all the time think I can't do it, I can't do it, I can't do it. You're making that true.
Yeah, absolutely. And can I do something with you really quickly? I would love for whoever's listening to
Mhm.
this to also just take a moment to, I want to
Yeah.
show you just how powerful your mind is and
Hmm.
how your mind will make physical and emotional response to what we're talking about. So for just a second, anyone that's listening, Ellie, just close your eyes and I want you to just take a deep breath in, breathe out. And now I want you to see in your mind's eye a lemon tree. And it's like the tip of summer, all of the fruit is perfectly ripe, and you go and pick a lemon off that tree. And now you bring that lemon inside the house and you get out a plate and a knife, and you can feel the weight of the lemon in your hand because it's so ripe and juicy. And now see yourself cutting through that lemon with that knife. And as you cut through it, the juice is washing over your fingers and on the plate. It's dripping a little bit on the table. And now you see yourself picking that lemon up and you hold it up to your face and you just take a deep breath. Just smell the sweet and sour combination of the lemon. Now you're going to open your mouth and you're going to take the biggest bite out of that lemon. You're going to squeeze the juice into your mouth. And as you do, the saliva in your mouth starts to go into overdrive because it's protecting the enamel on your teeth. You feel that puckering in the back of your tongue because of the sour acidity of the lemon. Now, Ellie, let me ask you, what's going on in your mouth right now? Is it watering?
Yeah, it's amazing.
And it's because the thoughts that we think and the pictures in our mind have a physical and emotional reaction in our body. So when you tell yourself, I'm bad at everything, or I suck,
Mhm.
or my life is terrible, then your body's gonna follow. Like, have you ever worked at a job that you hate and you just like, this job is killing me, ugh, this job, if I do this job one more day I'm just gonna die, it's killing me. And then
Mhm.
the next thing you know, oh, you have the worst stomach ache every time you want to go to work, or the worst headache. Well, your mind and your body's job is to protect you. So if you keep saying this job is killing me, it's going to do something to stop you from going. It's going to make you sick in other ways.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I find that always really fascinating. And it's the same way that like when people think about like sexual situations, they get aroused. It's all connected. It's like these are the things that control our physical body, which is why they also say, and I'm a big believer that disease starts in the mind.
Hmm.
And so, with that same premise, you can actually heal your body through things like hypnotherapy and rapid transformational therapy because you're changing your chemistry of your body with your mind.
Yeah. And there's something, so one of the qualifications that I have is functional nutrition. And it's actually something that we talked about a lot on that course is like if people are, very stressed or they have very bad um, mental health, and often you don't digest your food properly. So it might not be there when people come with digestive issues. It's not always necessarily because of what they're eating. Like it can be because of, I guess,
Yeah.
that brain body connection is preventing
Yeah,
good
absolutely.
food
The
from,
emotions.
yeah, it's, it is so powerful how the brain works.
It's really fascinating. And I think some people might hear this and get freaked out because then you're like, oh gosh, now I have to be paranoid about every thought that's coming into my mind. And I think it's important to remember that it's not about perfection. Nobody's
Hmm.
perfect. Perfect is boring. It's just about making, and that's kind of, my business, the everyday shift, that came from this idea that you don't have to change everything and you certainly don't have to change everything at once, but if you
Hmm.
just make that everyday shift, that small thing, just catch yourself the next time you're having a negative thought, catch yourself the next time you're saying something bad about yourself or you're complaining. And, one other thing I would love to share is that there's a part of our brain, in the back of our brain, it's called the reticular activating system. And this part
Hmm.
of our brain is responsible for processing and filtering all the information. We're getting so much data consciously
Mm-hmm.
and subconsciously throughout the day that our brains can't process all the data fast enough. So it has to pick and choose what it is that we're bringing in, which is why they say that, like, rose colored glasses, it's not just to be funny or to be toxically positive. It's to actually train your brain that when there's so many data points to look at and to um, analyze, focus on the good things, and that is what you will see more of, because your brain will be like, oh, things are, if I walk around and say things are always working out, my brain's going to look for proof that actually things are working out. And now suddenly opportunities that might have always been there but that I didn't see before because I was so focused on the opposite, let's say that things always are a disaster, and my mind is like, okay, well, yeah, I'm going to show you how bad they are, versus things are always great, I'm going to show you how good they can be.
So something that I talk to people about that's like in this kind of area that I find is a good example is, instead when especially when people are worried about like kind of toxic positivity thing, is making things neutral instead of negative or positive. Because I'm often doing people's like everyday life. So one of the examples is like cleaning your kitchen, and so like by using kind of gratitude of like, I'm thinking about while you're doing it, like, I'm glad I have a kitchen and a roof over my head and food to cook in so that it needs cleaning. And then I know that tomorrow morning, if I've done the cleaning tonight, I'm going to have a much better start to my day. It's not necessarily going to make you like clean the kitchen with joy in your heart, but it does at least make you feel less like, oh, I've got to do this before I go to bed. And that like overall kind of resets some of that like negative energy into just being neutral.
Yeah, I love that. That's something I do with my clients and also remind them of, which is that we have a choice. Like, with the exception of very few circumstances in life, we have a choice of everything. We have a choice to go to work or not. We have a choice to eat healthy or not. We have a choice to have whatever relationships. And even when we feel stuck, because I do work with people, I would say pretty often, who are feeling really unhappy in their career, women that are going through that, like they're in their 30s and their 40s and they're ready to make a change, but they just feel like they can't.
Mm-hmm.
It's so important to remember that you are choosing to go to this job. You may
Mm-hmm.
hate it, but you're getting something out of it. You're getting a paycheck out of it. You're getting stability out of it, whatever it is. And when
Mm-hmm.
you flip the thinking and remind yourself that you are making a choice, it does neutralize it and make it easier. The same way that I'm sure when you're working with your clients, it's not about saying I can't eat this food. And that's like such a big thing, because I'll occasionally work with people who are struggling to lose weight or just are having, food cravings and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like the worst thing you can do is tell yourself, I can't have this.
Mm-hmm.
Because as soon as you do that, your brain doesn't understand the negative. It just understands, oh, I want this,
Mm-hmm.
versus, yeah, I could eat this pastry if I wanted to right now, but I'm choosing not to because I like the way that I feel when I eat healthy. I'm
Mm-hmm.
choosing not to because I like the way that my body looks when I eat healthy, whatever it might be. And so I love that you do that, because I'm a big believer in that as well.
Yeah, and I sort of, my kind of outlook for people is often, which I think probably does come into a lot of what you were saying in the beginning about the way your brain works, but I guess I wasn't thinking of it in like such a, in the same framework. But it is that kind of overall, if you want to be happier overall, it can often be easier to remove some of the negative stuff more than trying to add in new positive stuff, because that can be quite overwhelming, especially when, like you say, a lot of women that I end up working with as well, like overwhelmed, like time is the problem.
Yeah.
There is
Yeah.
not time.
Right. And when someone feels like shit, telling them to just look on the bright side or be
Yeah.
positive, like, I'm sorry, leave me alone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's just, if I'm going through something, it's not, I don't want toxic positivity. Like, I'll get there eventually. But sometimes, again, it's just about, how can I just make the negative not be so negative, as opposed to
Yeah.
how can I take something like loss, for example. Loss is always going to be bad. There's no bright side to losing somebody that you love.
Yeah.
I think the part that you got to hold on to, and obviously grieving is a process, and it takes sometimes time to get to this place of like, yeah, this is terrible, but reminding yourself that you're resilient, reminding yourself that, like, You will survive this. As hard as it is, you will survive it. And I think that's why, especially when we think about grief, support is such a integral aspect of it. Support of people that have been through it.
Hmm.
Because if you can see someone who's further ahead than you in the grieving process, really whatever you're grieving, then you can remind yourself like life does go on. And happiness, I did this Rise Happiness Summit that you did as well.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's one of the things that I talked about too, is that happiness is not about having everything in your life work out perfectly and not having any conflict and not having any, tribulations to overcome. It's about finding these small moments that you can just appreciate. And again, that goes back to the reticular activating system in the back of our
Hmm.
brain, is that the more that you say like, hey, you know what? Today's a great day because I'm on a podcast with Ellie and I'm having a great conversation.
Hmm.
Today's a great day because, oh, that coffee was so good. And it just, whatever it is, I'm having a good hair day, like whatever,
Yeah.
keep the focus on those small things, and I promise you, you will have a happy life.
Yeah. And I think people think of happiness as being like a black or white thing, right? You've either got it all the time or you don't, or it's the opposite of sadness. And actually, like, even on like a bad day, you can have like moments of it that are that have there've been happiness or there's been something good. And that's why I really like kind of gratitude as a practice. And I guess it probably is retraining your brain a bit to try and, even especially when you've had a really bad day, at the end of it to be like, actually, what was like, what can I think of two things that were good? And even if they were just like, oh, that first coffee of the day like really
Yeah.
got me out of bed, or like got me going, or yeah, actually my hair was looking amazing, so even if everything else fell apart, like
Yeah.
my hair was on point. Like those little things just help you, like otherwise you can, the temptation is to kind of then get into bed and be miserable, and then that kind of can carry over into the next day, or not sleeping well. And just having those little practices that can just remind your brain even at a bad time.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's like if you feel like shit and you just can't get out of it, take a shower, do your hair, put some makeup on, put a
Yeah.
cute outfit on. And yeah, some might say you're like being delusional or tricking yourself, but that's the point. You can trick yourself. You can trick
Yeah.
yourself into be happier by just doing these small things. And so when the beliefs are not coming so easily and when the negative thoughts, you are having a hard time with those, then that's when I say get into the body. Like you're
Hmm.
having anxiety, you're feeling like all this tension in your chest. Stand up and shake your body the way that a dog would. There's a reason why animals shake their bodies in high emotional situations, because that's how they get it out. Humans are no different.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to just, go like this and get it out, or sometimes you need to just do yourself up so that you feel better because you look better, and then slowly the emotions and everything else will start to catch up.
Yeah. And it is, so I think that's why the hypnotherapy is so interesting, because like you say, it's quick and it's like a good access in, but also sometimes I think, so sometimes it's really obvious where these negative thoughts and beliefs are coming from, but sometimes it's really not, and that can be quite difficult to like identify when, especially like if on paper everything looks like it should be great, so everyone else is being like, oh, you've got this great job and whatever, your kids are like happy and healthy and obviously thriving, and your relationship, from the outside everything looks great, you've got a nice house. And so that can be really difficult if then you're not feeling that that is, that you're as happy or in such a good place as it looks like from the outside you should be. And so trying to figure out
Absolutely.
where that's coming from.
And yeah, and it's not, I mean, I think I want to just remind people too that it doesn't matter what it looks like on the outside.
Mm.
It
Yeah.
matters how you feel. And before I became a hypnotherapist, I worked in tech sales for 15, almost 20 years.
Hmm.
And I had a great job. I had many great jobs. I was making a lot of money. I had relative amount of freedom, and I was miserable. And
Hmm.
nobody could understand it because they're like, what's your problem? And what I realized later was that I had this belief that the only way that I could survive or be successful is if I worked a sales job working for someone else. Because at some point along the way when I was a kid, my parents struggled financially and I told myself I'm never going to be broke. And I made the connection to not being broke, meaning that you have to work for somebody else,
Mm-hmm.
and and you can't have it all and you can't be happy. And I did a lot of work on myself and became very aware of those beliefs and decided that no, I'm going to trust myself and I'm going to be a little bit delusional, because I think you have to be sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
so that the rest of yourself could catch up to the delusion. But I started doing hypnotherapy, and now I am in a position where I can make money and thrive and survive and do something that I love, and that I can actually help people get out of
Mm-hmm.
this feeling of being stuck. Because you are right. Sometimes we know where it comes from, and sometimes it can be so small or so suppressed that it takes hypnotherapy to put us into that relaxed state where the critical mind is calm, and we can just tap in and see what's really going on, because your subconscious knows. Like, if you want the answers to something, your subconscious knows. And there's all kind of tests that you can do. We do like a hand test, where sometimes if someone is going through a tough decision that they can't seem to pick, we'll do a hand test where it'll be like, okay, while they're in hypnosis, I'm going to ask you a question. And if it's yes, you're going to move your right finger. And if it's no, you're going to move your left finger. And it's sometimes the smallest little twitch, but you see it because your body and your subconscious has the answers. It's
Mm-hmm.
just the critical part of our brain that's like, I don't know if that's, if I'm ready to admit or acknowledge that's what's going on with me.
Yes, and sometimes I've had this before where you're at like a crossroads and you overthink it so much that you can't, it's really hard to get back in touch with that part of
Yeah.
your body because you've overthought both options to the extent that you can't really remember what the core issue was anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. Overthinking, I'm sure men and women alike overthink, but I think women, because a lot of our brains are just wired in this way. Men are much more compartmentalized, I would say. Like, I believe that the left and right side of their brain is a little bit further apart. So they're able to, segment work and relationship and life. And women were multitaskers by nature. So that also, while it's a great quality, it lends ourselves to overthinking everything, because we're like, I could think of every single scenario. And then, especially if you grew up, there's kind of four roles in every family growing
Mhm.
up. You have like the perfect one, you have the caretaker, you have the sick one, and then you have the troublemaker. And if
Mhm.
you're that caretaker of the household, then you're really overthinking, because you grew up needing to worry about what everyone else was doing, how they were feeling, how they were going to react. And so that's always something that's interesting that I find with my clients, is figuring out, okay, what role were you? What did you play in your household?
Mhm.
Because you'll find sometimes the sick one will be the sick one throughout their life, because at some point when they were little, for example, they learned that they got love and attention when something was wrong from their
Mhm.
family. And so now in their adult life, without even knowing it, their body's making them sick, and they're feeling sick and they're struggling because they associate love and affection with illness.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And I guess that sick thing can probably come in different ways, not necessarily like physical sickness, but that kind of like learned helplessness almost, where it's like I can't do things myself because I need other people. Other people are like filling a
Yeah.
role. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Illness, I don't look at that as just like a,
Mm.
oh, I have a cold, or I'm sick because I hurt. It can be anything. It could be the person that's like, oh, every time I do this thing, I get a headache. And they've
Yeah.
just that they default to that. I mean, I'm sure you've seen people that say stuff like that all the time. Oh, when it's anytime the weather gets a little bit cold, I'm sick. You don't have to be. You've just created this association. And so now
Yeah.
again, your mind is saying, oh, the weather is cold, time to get sick again, because that's what our mind told us is supposed to happen.
Well, I've talked to quite a few people about this in like different ways actually recently, but that those kind of childhood roles that get set and then they're like a lot about other people telling you what your role is and you may have outgrown it or it may have been not quite correct in the first place because it might be based on some one day when you were 5 and then everyone decided to do with the troublemaker even though you were actually quite inclined to be quite well behaved but you were being
Yeah.
5 and then that kind of follows through and still in your like 30s and 40s, like that's the story that a lot of people around you are telling you about yourself, but it doesn't feel right with what you feel you are inside, and that can cause quite a lot of like internal tension.
Absolutely. We have a choice to, just like how we have a choice of what we're doing in our life, we can
Mm-hmm.
choose the kind of person that we want to be. And while that's heavily affected by what we're hearing and what's been said around us
Mm-hmm.
and how we grew up, you can change it. And I went to talk therapy off and on as a client for years, and I had an amazing therapist. I love her dearly, but it was just the same. It was every week I would go and I would come to her and I would complain about what was going on, and we would talk about kind of, oh yeah, that stems from, your mom or your dad or whatever it might be. But it wasn't until I started to do hypnotherapy, both as a client and then again as a therapist, that I realized that the reason why it's so much more effective is because we spend far less amount of time talking about what the problem is,
Mm-hmm.
and we spend much more time getting not only to the root of the problem, rewiring the thinking. So like, yeah, maybe whatever you thought or believed suited you as a child because you needed to think that or believe that for your survival, but it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
fit anymore into your
Yeah.
adult life. And then a big part of the session and where the repetition comes in afterwards is that we do a transformation. So at the end of every session, we put back into the client's subconscious, what does your life look like? What if you were happy, if you stopped overthinking, if you didn't have
Mm-hmm.
anxiety, if you didn't have depression, if you didn't have imposter syndrome, whatever the issue is, if that was no longer a problem, how would you look? How would you feel? How would you talk? How would you carry yourself? Talk
Mm-hmm.
me through your entire day. And we get the client to use it in their own words. And then I put that back into their subconscious. And then they're listening to that about 15-minute recording every day for the next 30 days. So
Mm-hmm.
that neuroplasticity, those neurons and those connections, instead of being so strong in the negative of whatever their issue was, they are now being reformed in the positive of what their life looks like without the issue. And that's why this therapy is so powerful and works usually with just in a few sessions per issue, as opposed to something where you're just talking about the problem every week and maybe you're aware of where it comes from, but you're just reiterating the issue as opposed to the solution.
Yes, and so what my experience of talk therapy was quite similar, but I think I needed the bit at the beginning to like get clarity about like what were problems that I could fix just by talking them through with someone, and then what
Sure.
were like that were like deep in that just talking about them, like you say, was just starting to go around in circles because what I wasn't doing, it would be like you said, almost like the same problem every week or in a kind of monthly cycle of like 3 months because I wasn't actually learning how to either stop the problem from happening in the first place or deal with it differently for there to be a different outcome. And then you need something else to figure that piece out. And for lots of
Right.
people, talk therapy isn't always effective because it's they can only go off what you're saying, and that you have to know what the issue is to
Right.
know
And sometimes you
the
don't
solution.
know,
Yeah,
or that this is, not, people don't usually go to talk therapy for fear of public speaking, but I
yeah.
think it's a good example.
Mm-hmm.
Fear of public speaking is not usually about fear of public speaking.
Mm-hmm.
It's about usually this belief that, like, what if I mess up? What if I do something wrong? Will I
Mm-hmm.
be judged? Okay, and why do people think that way? When we're born, you think that a baby is like, "Oh no, don't look at me. I'm naked." And if they're hungry, they cry. If they're cold, like whatever is happening, a baby has full confidence
Mm-hmm.
and full just, this is who I am, no problem, no insecurities, no fears. And it's a learned behavior. So something like public speaking, that fear comes as a learned behavior because they heard people say that, oh, it's scary to talk in public, or that maybe they were humiliated as a child, either in a school setting or with a friend or family members.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't always I mean, I don't remember everything that happened when I was a kid. I'm sure most people don't. But when you tap into the subconscious and you ask the subconscious to go to the root of it,
Hmm.
Your mind, I don't tell my clients where their issues started. They tell me. I just guide them to be able to go through the layers to find out really what the root of it is and not just what their conscious mind is trying to make sense of.
Yeah, and it can be, it can be something really small that like your brain's latched onto because of the timing, right? So like public speaking is probably quite good. Again, it's a good example because it might be that like at school you had to do a thing to the class and it didn't go that well, so then you were already feeling not great about it, and that on its own might not have been enough. But then it might be that someone else then said, "Oh yeah, but you're always whatever, you always shake when you do it, or you always sound really silly when you talk like that," or something. And then the two things combined of like, and so they're both on their own quite small things, but together on a day when you were already feeling a bit vulnerable, they've like latched in there in a way that
Yeah.
each of them on their own might not have done. Or if it was on a day when you were feeling like you had great hair, so it didn't matter, it might have like dinged off you.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So what I find interesting about this stuff when it's these little small things, but they have like such big impacts, is that then when you find the right thing that works for you, the change is also really quick with quite small changes.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say with hypnotherapy or rapid transformational therapy, 50 to 60% of the change just happens in the session. The sessions are usually about 90 minutes long. I do them on Zoom, but they're just as effective in person or
Mm-hmm.
online. The other part of it comes from listening to the recording. It
Yeah.
comes from really cementing in that change. And to me, listening to something for 15 minutes that I can fall asleep to, or when I'm driving in the car, or when I'm going for a walk, is a lot easier than having to show up online or in person every single week
Mm-hmm.
and talk about my problems. And because, be honest with you, sometimes it can be very draining and exhausting to talk about your issues. And it's not that you don't talk about the issue at all in hypnotherapy. You certainly do, because you need to know what you're working on. But a lot of clients come out of hypnotherapy feeling lighter. They feel better.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like you're purging these things that you've been holding on to, these weights that are on your shoulders because of years and years of just banging your head, against the wall with like these negative thoughts and beliefs. And yeah, so it can be very, very effective and very fast. And I think every issue is a little bit different. Some things, I've had clients that have quit smoking or vaping after just one session.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then things like imposter syndrome and some of these self sabotage beliefs usually take a couple more sessions because you're really peeling back a lot more. Um,
Yeah, and I that's interesting because I guess with something like an addictive thing, by the time you're coming to that, you've already tried a few things and you know you really want to stop. So that's like quite, you're probably quite a long way through the process. You just need that like help to get it over the line. Where with something like self sabotage, because you might not even know exactly why you're doing it, you need a lot of help to get even to the first bit of the line.
Yeah, I think that's definitely part of it. I think the other part of it, when we're thinking about something like quitting smoking or vaping, is that while there are beliefs that are formed a lot of time, I've had clients where we did a session and I regressed them, and it came to them being in middle school and going to sleepaway camp and seeing the camp counselors like sneak off and smoke. And so they associated this kind of rebellious, fun, cool thing with smoking, even though in their adult life, they know like this is gross and it's bad for you. But
Yeah,
there's that inner part of them that's like, but this is something I'm doing, I'm having
yeah,
control,
yeah.
I'm fighting against, authority. And so with smoking, it's really a matter, or vaping, it's a matter of changing the association. Because, yeah, I think when you try to do off sheer willpower or the gums or the patches, like it might work for a little while, but you're not smoking because suddenly found out it's bad for you. Like everyone knows that vaping
Yeah.
and smoking is bad for you. There is some part of your brain that still associates it with something positive. Even if like conscious you're like this is disgusting, I hate this. And so the job of hypnotherapy in that setting is to change the subconscious belief to like, oh, this is cool or fun or whatever it is that you believe about it,
Hmm.
to truly feeling on a deep, deep level that this is like disgusting and that I want no part of this and it makes me feel sick and it turns me off. And so that you can quit for real and for good and
Hmm.
not just, oh, I did the patches, but I still have this like psychological tie to it because your physical withdrawals are going to be gone within a couple days. The
Yeah.
reason why people relapse and keep smoking is not because they're physically addicted anymore. It's because there's an emotional tie that's holding them.
Yes, whether that's like, oh, I've had a bad day, so that's what I do for stress relief, or like, yeah, all kinds of reasons.
Exactly. And the idea that smoking or vaping is relaxing you is such a lie because it's a stimulant. It's not relaxing you at all. You want to know what's relaxing?
Yeah.
Taking a deep breath. When you inhale a cigarette or a vape, you are literally taking a deep breath in. So if you are a smoker or a vapor and you are trying to stop, sometimes I'll tell people cut a straw and just
Hmm.
hold the straw and take it every time you feel stressed out, take a deep breath in because you will still get that release of like relaxation because you're breathing, which is ultimately the thing that's helping you relax, not the
Yeah.
nicotine, which is, causing your anxiety to shoot through the roof.
Yeah. It's so funny, isn't it? And it can be so difficult on your own to get to the root of those weird connections that you've made. And
Yeah.
so having the like a practitioner who's got the understanding of like where that might be coming from, because it can, on paper, it can seem quite like out of pocket where that belief has come from.
Yeah. It's true. It's true. And sometimes I have to remind my clients while we're in the session, don't overthink it. Like if I regress you to a scene or if I'm taking you through, we do like a game of Chinese whispers where I say something and then you have to say the first thing that comes into your mind or finish a sentence, the immediate thought.
Hmm.
Sometimes you can see people fighting against just coming what naturally comes to them because their critical mind tries to jump in and say that doesn't make any sense, like we're talking about whatever we're talking about, why is my like third grade teacher something coming up when we're talking about smoking? But it's allowing yourself to not judge it and to just whatever comes up because there's a reason why it's coming up. Your brain
Hmm.
is not just wandering for the sake of wandering. I'm guiding you through a session. So if something is coming up for you, trust that
Yeah.
and we'll make sense of it afterwards. Like you don't need to worry about putting the puzzle pieces together while you're in the moment of it. That's what the whole session is for, is to kind of
Yeah.
build the foundation and then put it all together at the end.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So I guess we're coming to near the end. So what I would be really interested to hear about before we finish is like what a sort of typical session would look like.
Sure. So, as I mentioned, my sessions are all done online. And
Hmm.
I actually love that for my clients because, a lot of people will feel really relaxed at the end of the session. Sometimes, if they've worked through heavy emotions, they might be really emotional. And so, although typically a session is about 90 minutes, unlike traditional therapy, I'm not looking at the clock going, okay, you can't go a minute over 90 minutes. We go with the flow of the session. But I
Hmm.
like to tell my clients to block off 2 hours if they can. And by them doing it remotely, a lot of times they're doing it at home or on their couch or in their living room, somewhere where they're comfortable so they can ease back in,
Hmm.
and they're not just like running into my office and then having to drive immediately out right at the end of the session. So, typical session, I will, prior to scheduling it, have a quick call with the client to figure out what it is, usually about 15 minutes, what
Hmm.
it is that they want to work on or they're struggling with. Then I will send them an intake form. We'll schedule the session. The beginning of the session, we will talk about the issue that they're having, talk a little bit about their childhood, talk about, what symptoms and triggers come up with whatever this issue is. How does it feel in their body? How's it affecting their life? Um, then we'll talk about what they want. So like if we could heal whatever this issue was, if you can come out of this without that issue, what is it that you would actually want? So in the
Hmm.
positive, again, we're trying to frame everything because your mind doesn't know the negative words. So if you say,
Yeah.
I want to stop smoking, it doesn't hear the stop. It just thinks smoking, makes that visualization. So we'll talk about what they want. And then we'll talk about, well, what is your life now that you have what you want? What does your life look like? And that's what I was mentioning before. Tell me in detail. How
Hmm.
do you feel when you wake up in the morning? How do you interact with the people in your life? What are you doing? What's better? And then we will regress through, we'll put him at that point, we'll go into hypnosis, regress to a few scenes to figure out what the root of that issue is. And there's some other techniques that we do. Sometimes people struggle to have like scenes come up, so we'll take them back to their childhood home and have them visualize seeing themselves and having a conversation. There's a lot of like fun things that are specific to rapid transformational therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And then once we've gotten to the root of what the belief is and what has caused whatever their current day situation is, we will reframe the thinking. And this is where we're flushing everything out that had to do with that belief. So the same way that, when you take a shower and that water washes down the drain, you can't go back and collect that drain water. Like, that's gone. That's
Mm-hmm.
what we do with those beliefs and those old thought patterns. We are just letting them go, just as we did with the water in the shower. And then we're reframing and putting in the new transformation. That's the last 15 minutes or so. And that's what they will then have a recording of that they listen to every day. I tell clients 30 days, but I have some clients that saw me months ago and they still, whenever they're feeling like they need a little refresher or they just want to pick me up, they'll listen to it because you feel bad. I mean, imagine someone for 15 minutes just telling you all these amazing things about yourself and painting this picture of this amazing, incredible life. You
Mm-hmm.
have no choice but to feel better listening to something like that.
Yes, and actually, to go back to the public speaking example, I can imagine like a scenario where, so say, the thing that's holding you back is you want to take the next step at work, but you know that next job would involve quite a lot more public speaking or training people or doing something like that, and that's what's holding you back from applying for it, because other than that, it's like your dream job, and so you want to do it. And I can see a point where you got over it, but then still, every time you had to do a presentation or do that thing, you'd be like, oh, I just need to listen to that again to just like remind me that I'm
Yeah.
in the like zone to do it.
Absolutely. And that's where the visualization also becomes really important. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's great to practice. If you're going to do a speech or a presentation, by all means, practice. But sometimes you can't practice in front of an audience full of people. And that's very different for someone than practicing with just speaking in front of a mirror or to a friend. And so that's where the power of the mind comes in, and your brain not always knowing the difference between reality and what's something that you imagine.
Mm-hmm.
So for those clients, I remind them, imagine yourself, visualize yourself standing in a room of 50, 100, however many people you're going to be presenting to. Imagine seeing your shoulders back, your stomach feels calm, you're speaking clearly, the words are flowing, you're communicating effectively, you're engaging with your audience. Like, see yourself doing all of it, because that's going to train your brain that when you're in the actual moment and you are in front of those people, the default, your neural pathways are going to go to like, oh, we know this, we've been here, shoulders down, stomach
Mm-hmm.
feels good, communicating clearly and effectively, engaging, excited, all the things that you did in your practice round,
Mm-hmm.
your body will be more in tune with to just naturally do when you're in the real scenario.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so amazing what your brain can do with the right tools,
Yeah,
right? um,
absolutely.
Thank you so much. This has been so interesting, and I feel like a really good like explanation of what, like, both what it can help with, but also like what actually happens. Because like we said at the beginning, it can be something that people can have some like weird preconceptions about
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
are not very based in the reality. So if people wanted to, work with you or hear more about what you do, what is the best way for them to get in touch?
They can reach out to me on Instagram at the Everyday Shift, or my website is theeverydayshift.com. My contact information is on there. But yeah, I'm actually opening up for some more clients in this coming month. So if anyone is struggling and needs help, I'm here to work with you and support you. And just know that it is never too late to change. It is never too late to get your happy back and to just get on a path that you feel good about. And you don't have
Yeah,
to do it alone.
awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ellie.